Srila Madhvacharya. He's a great personality, so it gave me the opportunity to do some more research. I have given a class about him before, but it's nice to go more in depth. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So the subject is, who is Srila Madhvacharya and what is his contribution to Vaishnav theology? I will start straight. So with in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, Prabhupada gives the translation. So I'm just going to start from here. So at the time, all of the South Indian Vaishnavas were worshippers of Lord Ramachandra. Some were Tattvavadis and some were followers of Ramanujacharya. In the purport, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's, he explains that the Tattvavadis refer to the followers of Madhvacharya, and Madhvacharya named his group to separate them from the followers of Sankaracharya at the time. So he called his disciples Tattvavadi to separate them, because this is what was happening at the time. And I think we are familiar that Madhvacharya is coming down from the Brahma Sampradaya, and it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains in his Dasa Mula Tattva that it is very important for us to accept this bona fide, to accept this parampara coming down from Brahma. It is very important for us to know that this knowledge is coming down from Brahma, and it is realized from it was explained to him from Krishna, from within his heart, from his heart. Deni Brahma Hirda Ya Adi Kavaye. So Brahma realized this knowledge from his heart, meaning that prior to him, as a supreme, as the first person that existed, it was Krishna who explained this knowledge. It is not something that he figured himself out from studying the Vedas. The Vedas was given to him from Krishna, from within the heart. Now from Brahma, it went down through the disciplic succession. He explained it to his son Narada, and Narada, first Krishna and then to Brahma. And then Brahma down to Narada, Narada to Vyasa, Vyasa to Madhvacharya, and it goes all the way down to here. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it's very important for us to recognize that this para is bona fide. And the way this knowledge is received is through this unbroken chain of disciplic succession. And he makes a very clear point that those who do not accept this will find it very hard to understand the scriptures, even if they superficially take it and even accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but don't accept the parampara, will find very hard to assimilate this knowledge. So I think it's that was one point I needed to make, because we will find the role of Madhvacharya easier to understand by knowing how his role, and also his role, I think we will understand better if we know what was going on at that time when he appeared. Madhvacharya, when he appeared, it says he appeared in 1238 AD, and at that time the whole place was the philosophy that was really popular at the time was Mayavadi, and it was and we can understand Mayavadi was a huge thing that was spreading everywhere, and it was overtaking what was Buddhism prior to that. Buddha had a reason to come, and people were misusing the Vedas. I'm sure everybody would have an understanding why Buddha appeared to some. So I'll go through that very quickly. So Lord Buddha appeared because he wanted to get people away from the Vedas. The Vedas were being misused, where they are using it for yagyas, and a lot of animals were being killed mercilessly. So he needed to throw people off the Vedas. Like if you're trying to build a building and if it's dilapidated, it's in a bad condition, the only way to fix that building is break it all down, start from scratch. So in the same way, when Buddha appeared, he wanted to get everybody off the Vedas and just say, and his philosophy, there's 9 points in particular, but he's trying to say that if you just practice ahimsa, and non-violence, and Lord Buddha is the only way to understand the truth, putting people off the Vedas, really. But Prabhupada in the Chaitanya Charitamrita went through each of these 9 points, and he really refuted each of the arguments very nicely. I won't go into that because that would be more Buddhism, but one interesting one is, we are all familiar with Buddha talks about ahimsa, non-violence, and Prabhupada makes a point even that is not a very useful thing to have if you do not really understand your sambandha, your relationship with Krishna. What is your position as a jiva, and what is your position with other jivas, and what is your position as a jiva to the Supreme? If you do not have that understanding, the very idea of ahimsa does not hold ground. And the reason is because if you do not recognize another jiva, then your idea of being merciful is relative. For example, somebody who's very rich can feel compassion for somebody who's poor, or somebody who is physically well will feel a little compassion for somebody who's not physically unwell. So the idea of compassion itself, it's relative. So in that way we can see that the knowing that we are jivas makes a huge difference on how we see what compassion is. So it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or healthy or not healthy or which circumstances you're in, we can feel compassion for everybody because we are all suffering. Because when we are seeing ourselves from the point of view as a jiva, that idea of compassion makes total sense. So Lord Buddha's idea of ahimsa doesn't really hold any water. So there was many other arguments Prabhupada put forward, and it's very nice, but I thought this really got my attention because it is something that a lot of Buddhists would feel very proud that they are practicing ahimsa, and they would always push forward that is one of their main tenets. But then so Krishna wanted, so it's like a plan. So after Buddha appeared, Krishna sent forth Shiva as Sankaracharya to bring forth Mayavadi philosophy. And Prabhupada quotes Padma Purana, where Shiva tells his wife, Parvati, Shiva tells Parvati, hear how I will spread ignorance through Mayavadi philosophy. Just by hearing this, a very learned scholar can be totally deviated. His intelligence can be spoiled. And he says that I'm going to misrepresent the meaning of the Vedas, and the philosophy is give up all kinds of activities to be free from karma. And one of the main ones is to say that the Jivatma is the same as the Supreme. So this is this is his main deviation, which caused a lot of problems, and the popular verses in the Vedas that they would use is Tat Tvam Asi or Aham Brahmasmi to say I am. Like we are all ultimately God, and you are Narayana, I'm Narayana, and we are all Narayanas. And so the example that they will use a lot is like the example that they will use is like air in a clay pot. The air within the clay pot is the same as the air outside the clay pot. What separates the both air is the clay pot, and this clay pot is what they signify as Maya. Now, just to before I go into what they think, but we know from Prabhupada's books and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and from the Bhagavad Gita that we are like the rays of sunshine. We are part and parcels of Krishna. Krishna explains himself that there is three energies. There's the superior energy, we are the Tatashta Shakti, the marginal, and then there's the inferior energy. And being minute, we tend to be affected by the material energy when we identify with it, with our false ego. When we think we are this body, then we identify with matter, we get affected. So we know we are separate. We know the idea is that we are separate. But he says you can overcome this material energy if you surrender unto me. Devi hi yesha gunamai mama maya duratyaya ma mevam ye prapatyante mayam etam tarantite. So it is his inferior energy that we can overcome, provided we surrender to Krishna. So we know this from our basic Vaishnava philosophy. The Mayavadi philosophy is quite interesting. They say that the supreme, or this entity, is non-dual. That means it's only one unit, and you cannot fragment it. You cannot. It's unvariegated. And question is, then how did we get covered? How did we get covered? So they say, well, yes, the Maya covers you. But then they don't explain, well, where did this Maya come from? If the whole thing was just one big Brahman, so where did this Maya come from? How does it act? How is it that it's is it superior? If you say it's inferior to Brahman, then how is it has the ability to cover sparks of Brahman? They cannot explain any of that. Suddenly you have something that acts at its own will. And Bhakti Thakur gives a very nice discussion, and he really speaks this very clearly. But basically the idea does not hold. So this is where I think, the very idea that you and I and everybody is God, and there is no antaryami, there is no witness as a super soul in our heart. This very idea of philosophy, we can see that, why all the fuss? So what if they want to believe that? So what if the Mayavadis want to believe that everybody eventually can have the potential of being God? What is the problem with that? I think we can see the problem with that kind of mentality when it trickles down to our daily, what we observe, especially in the youth today. I don't know if you, sometimes in social media you get all sorts of stuff coming on your feed.
But then when you notice youths, when they are, I don't know whether they are into tattooing their body head to toe, or mutilating their bodies, or plastic surgery, or whatever it is that they do to themselves to make themselves feel good. I like to observe people's reaction to this. I have my opinion, what I think, but I look into the comments to see what people's reactions are to the current youths when they are doing this. And what surprises me is the positive reaction that they get. And most of the time, it's like, whatever makes you happy, then do it. If that is good for you, then do it. Because if you are, it trickles down. The way we can see is, if you're God, then I'm God, then your opinion matters as much as my opinion on things. What you think is just as true as what I think. Suddenly, there's a whole variety of belief system, as many as there is people. That's because you do not accept there's one individual person as God, and he sets on what is right and wrong. If you don't accept that, and accept that everybody has the right to be God, then yes, this is the mess we will end up with. And it's very sad, because it is the current youth. They are so lost. They don't know what to believe, where to go.
and then they are being told, if it works for you, then go ahead and do it. If it feels good for you, it feels right for you, it must be right. And Prabhupada constantly says, Krishna consciousness is a spiritual science. It's not a belief. Why believe something if it's not true? And so he really wanted us to study Krishna consciousness and take it as a science. And the science that we know, what we got taught in school, or what children get taught in school, it is all based on pratyaksha and anumana, based on your sense perception and as well as inference. And it is an inferior way to gain knowledge. And so Prabhupada and all the previous acharyas, they emphasize that you have to depend on the Vedas, because the Vedas are what they call our Purushaya. That means they are revealed knowledge, and they are, it is given by Krishna. When he says Vedaischa sarve aham eva vidyo, Vedanta krit veda vid aham eva chaham. So I am to be known through the Vedas. I am the compiler of the Vedas, and yes, so he says that the Vedas is the ultimate authority, and the way you understand it is by accepting it and submissively inquiring through the acharyas. And so that is so Mayavadi philosophy or thinking is it pollutes the mentality of everybody. So we can argue on saying, on the technical side on how it's wrong, but we can see if you let it go, it's very contaminating. There's a nice story I heard Radhanath Maharaj say that it is, it's a very subtle difference, but it is there, because in the strictest term, you find a lot of Mayavadis, they are as austere as Vaishnavas, if not more. The way they practice their spiritual life, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam, they would offer their food to Krishna, and they will serve, and they will chant the holy names of Rama and Krishna repeatedly. But it is the motivation. What are they doing it for? And Radhanath Maharaj told a story, I remember in a class. He said before he came to meet Prabhupada, he was wandering around everywhere in India, and he came across this Babaji that he spent about, 1 to 2 years, I can't remember. But he was so taken by him because he kept chanting Rama, 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 Rama all the time. And he's just like, wow, the devotion this man has. It's amazing. So he spent so much time following him everywhere and just trying to see what a great example it is, And then after that 1.5 or nearly 2 years, he asked, so what attachment, what is it that you have for Rama that you are constantly calling his name? And he said, because one day I will become Rama. And that's when Radhanath Maharaj like, oh my God, so he changed his course. But that is the story. So, it's very easy to miss, because the practice on a surface seems very similar, but it is what they have in mind that really matters. Anyway, so Madhvacharya made a huge effort to change that mentality when he was spreading like everywhere, so Shankaracharya, he made his headquarters in I can't remember the name now, but it's not very far from Udupi. And Madhvacharya himself was born in Udupi. And if you looked into the database and you typed in Madhvacharya, you find that Prabhupada has quoted Madhvacharya hundreds of times. So Prabhupada really looked into the commentary of Srila Madhvacharya when he was trying to write the Bhagavad Gita and all the other books. He was looking into Madhvacharya's commentary, and Madhvacharya wrote the commentary on Bhagavad Gita, and he did his work. So I'll just read a few of the verses that Prabhupada quoted of Madhvacharya. Vivikta drishti jivanam dishnyathaya parameshvarasya veda drishtihi. One who has a clear vision and who is devoid of envy can see that the Supreme Lord is separate from all living entities, although he is situated in every living entity. Another verse, Upapadayet Paramatmanam Jivebhyoya Pade Pade Vedanaiva Chai Tasmat Priyo Vishnu Tu Kaschana. One who sees the living entity and Supreme Lord as always distinct is very dear to the Lord Vishnu, A third one, Yo Hares Chaiva Jivanam Veda Vyakta Hare Priya. One who preaches that the living entities are separate from the Supreme Lord is very dear to Lord Vishnu. So we can see that Srila Prabhupada consulted Srila Madhvacharya's commentary when he was writing the Bhagavad Gita. Another thing we can also notice is the message that he's finding the theme of his preaching. The theme of Madhvacharya's preaching is always about trying to say that we are separate from Krishna. We are never one. Hare Krishna, welcome to...
That first verse you read out was very like a Chimpadena Vedasanta.
Yes, yeah. He's separate, although he's situated in although he's present in every, yeah. And so I think when we talk about Mayavadi, there's another lecture that I heard very nice, that it kind of makes you think if there is so much difficulty that can come from having this kind of philosophy applied, why is it that it's so hard to see otherwise? Why is it so hard to give up for some people? Why is it so hard to give up? And it's just, the answer is because it's deep-rooted envy. Deep-rooted envy to not accept Krishna as a supreme person. In the spiritual world, Krishna is a supreme person and everybody is happy with that. Whether it's in Vaikuntha or whether it's in Goloka Vrindavan, everybody is happy to accept Krishna as a supreme person. And he is, there is some awe and reverence with Narayana, but with Krishna, they are happy to, there's no tint of Mayavadi philosophy, but there is here in the material world. And why is that? Because there's this deep-rooted envy. People cannot accept that Krishna is a supreme person, and so they say, why does he have to be the center of attention? You and I and everybody can be the same. So that is, that's really where the mentality roots from. So he came, Srila Madhvacharya came. This is in the early 1200s. He's interesting. He's very interesting. I mean, just as much as, all the acharyas are interesting. He's after Sankaracharya came, and the story goes that Brahma and all the demigods went to see Vishnu and said, we are very disturbed. Things are going a little out of line and it's very worrying. And it's, can you please help and tell us what to do? And so Vishnu was thinking, and he was looking around and his glance landed on Vayu. And then he looked at Vayu and said, well, I want you to go down and I want you to preach personalism to everybody. And Vayu took on the role very seriously, and he descended. So just before he descended, Udupi is south of India, a little bit to the west, near the coast, and there is a temple called Ananta Ishvara temple, and his father's name is Madhya Geha, and the village that he appeared in was Pajaka Kshetra. Now, this place is just before he appeared. A devotee that goes to the temple climbed up a pole as if he was possessed. And later on they say, well, it's the deity of Ananta Ishvara that possessed him, but made an announcement that the incarnation of Vayu is going to descend himself someday. And then he climbed down the pole and he was back to his normal consciousness. So everybody remembers this incident, but then they just thought this is crazy, to just make that announcement. But anyway, it was just something they had in their mind. When his father left the temple and went back, he decided with his wife that I think it's time for us to conceive a child. His wife's name was Vedavati, and they both, he's from a very established Brahmana family, spent most of his life studying the Vedas. And so he and his wife decided to take on austerity to have this. They don't know it's going to be Vayu, but it was just something they decided to do between themselves. So they only drank milk for 12 years. I think at that time, I think it's pretty amazing. So they only drank milk for 12 years, and then they went in front of the deity of Ananta Ishvara and said, okay, we would like to have a devotee, and got the deity's blessings. And so he was born. And there's a lot of stories. There's so many stories. I'm only going to tell a few stories that I really I thought was interesting and also quite well known. So he was born, and he was named. His name when he was born was called he was named Vasudeva, not Madhvacharya. His name was Vasudeva. When he was about 6 months old, this is like the grain ceremony for a child. It was approaching that time anyway. So he had an older sister, and the mother wasn't in the house. So he was starting to get very hungry. We know Vayu. We also know Bhima, the appetite. So he was really hungry, and the sister's like trying to pacify him. Don't worry, mom will be back soon. And she just didn't know what to do. And so she found this bag of cow feed, like coarse grains that is meant for the cow. And she said, okay, just munch on this. And she ran out to go and look for the mother. And when the mother and the sister came back, he finished the whole 40 kilos of grains. And the mother was like, even the bull doesn't eat this much, but he was very happy. He was very happy. So this is him at 6 months. When he got a little bit older, he found out, when I say older, I'm talking about less than 5 years old. He found out that his father was in debt, owed money. In those days, being in debt is something very ashamed of. Nowadays, it's different. When you say, I've got a mortgage for 35 years, it's like, woohoo, But those days, having to owe anybody any money, it's something to be very ashamed of. So, and this person who's owed money said, I'm going to fast till you pay me. So he was, he said, I'm going to be outside your doorstep until you pay me. And so the father was just like, what is he going to do, and he was very disturbed by it. So little Vasudev decided, get me some tamarind seeds. So the father was like, yeah, okay, got him some tamarind seeds. He turned it all into gold coins and paid off the debt for his father. Yeah, so there are some miraculous stories. And then when he was 5 years old, there was a demon Bhima killed in the field of Kurukshetra called Maniman. He appeared again when he was little Vasudev in the form of a snake. But he managed to kill the snake with the big toe of his left foot. For a little child to do it, it's quite a big thing. The mother was totally shocked. But at 5 years old, he wasn't any ordinary 5-year-old. He got his Brahman initiation at that young age, and he took his sannyas when he was 12. When he took sannyas, his name was Purna Prajna Tirtha, and he took initiation from Achyuta Priksha. Both Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya, when they had to take initiation, their gurus were all Mayavadi gurus, because at that time the real Vaishnava gurus were so afraid to be seen because they could not defeat the Mayavadi philosophy well enough. So they went into hiding practically. So they weren't actually available. So that's why they had to take initiation. But Achyuta Preksha, unlike Ramanuja's guru, when Ramanuja came forward and told him that we are jivas and there's a supreme person, talk to him about personalism, his guru was very angry and he tried to kill his disciple, Ramanuja. But Madhvacharya's guru was not happy with him. But eventually he got he was proud of his disciple. He accepted the philosophy and he decided, I want to learn from you. So that was a bit of a difference there. But in the beginning, there was a little bit of animosity. They weren't very happy with what the disciples were doing, but Madhvacharya's guru was quite more accepting.
So to interrupt, Ramanuja, who came first?
Ramanujacharya came first, and then Madhvacharya came later. There's a slight difference in their philosophy. There's a slight difference, but both of them are very much very ritualistic in their manner, and both of them.
They both came after Sankaracharya.
Yes, they both came with the purpose to defeat Sankaracharya's Mayavadi philosophy. But Mayavadi is a personality that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chose to come down that lineage, as I will try. Yes, Madhvacharya, because he worshipped Krishna. He accepted Krishna. Whereas Ramanujacharya was more of Sita and Rama. There's a reason for that also. Well, I'll go into that. Let me just finish this pastime of Madhvacharya. So some Sringeri Matha, that's it. So he traveled for a while after he was 12 years old, and then he came back to Sringeri Matha. Sringeri Matha is the headquarters of the Shankaracharya's movement, which is close to Udupi. So he went there and met with the Acharya of that time, also down by the disciplic succession of Sankaracharya, and his name is Vijaya Sankara, and he totally, refuted him. He was managed to argue, and so that was a big success, because there's always this tension, because both their headquarters were so close, location geographically, and so was able to refute it. And then he later on, Madhvacharya traveled to Badarika Ashrama. He actually went to meet Vyasadeva in person. This is amazing because the part where Vyasadeva is not possible to get to easily. I mean, you got to pass through glaciers of ice and everything. And the story goes, Madhvacharya had a whole group of disciples following up to the foothills of mountain, and to a degree, a lot of them could follow. Then after some time, one of his disciples followed him as far as he could. Satyatirtha was his name. And then they went up as far as possible, and eventually Satyatirtha said, I can't do this anymore. I can't go, and it's impossible. And so the story goes that Madhvacharya just flung his hand down to the foothill, and his disciple flew down to the foothill and landed there safely. But he went over and he saw Vyasadeva in person. So Vyasadeva, as you can see, would be his Siksha Guru. His Diksha was Achyuta Preksha. And when he saw Vyasadeva, he talked to him about Bhagavad Gita. So he started writing it, he started reciting it, and Satyatirtha, his disciple, actually wrote the whole commentary down. So by the time he left Badarika Ashrama and came back to Udupi, he finished the commentary. So he's written the whole book by then, which is quite a feat. He also went to see Vyasadeva for the second time. So they met each other twice. The second time he went to see, he was given Shaligram Shila, and he was asked to write the commentary of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, which is also another interesting, because I don't know whether, so in the it's again it's called the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. The interesting thing is when the chapter 3 to 9 of the book, apparently he talks about his position as Hanuman. He talks about what it was like, and he particularly talked about the fact that the chastity or the loyalty of Sita was questioned, and Rama was doubtful whether she's been touched by Ravana and all of that. He was trying to explain, you got to see that this was just an act they have to put for that time. Of course, she's not touched and all of this. And then chapter 10 to 32, he talked of his position as Bhima. He talked about his, in fact, apparently one of the pastimes is that he actually brought his disciples to the place where he buried his weapons when he was Bhima. And they uncovered the whole weapons and they found it. Sometimes, I don't know if ever you come through Facebook, where you will find pictures of people saying, "Oh, we found it again," but that's not not the real weapon. But anyway, I'm just saying that. So, and this is another interesting story, and that Madhvacharya, he used to go to Udupi in the beach, and there was the beach in Udupi. He would swim a lot in there, and one day he noticed that there was a ship going, and it was in danger. So somehow he managed to direct the ship to come to shore, and he saved the ship from getting shipwrecked. And the owner of the ship was very grateful, and they said, "What can we do for you?" And he said, "Well, I would like some gopi chandan." So he asked for a lot of gopi chandan, a lot. So the owner of the ship, okay. So he found the gopi chandan in a lake nearby. Obviously, he didn't have gopi chandan in his ship. Gave him the whole gopi chandan, and when it cracked open, he found a Gopal Krishna deity holding a stick and food on the other hand. It was so heavy that 30 men couldn't carry it. But Madhvacharya carried him, the deity, back to Udupi and installed, and it's still being worshipped till today. So this is the Gopal Krishna deity that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Udupi, went to his tour in South India, he arrived there, and this is where he chanted and danced in ecstasy because he saw Gopal Krishna deity. So Madhvacharya is like our missing link between Shankaracharya to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that missing link in terms of how the philosophy had to change. And so although he's a devotee of Krishna, the Tattvavadis and the Ramanujacharya very much worship Rama and Sita. And Prabhupada says there's really no taste in love for Krishna in that sampradaya. The only time that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentioned or noticed is when Madhavendra Puri, the guru of his guru, his guru is Ishwara Puri's guru is Madhavendra Puri, when he exhibited the symptoms of love, that's when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided, okay, I will take initiation from this sampradaya. And the conversation Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had with, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was trying to spread the Sankirtan movement, he sent Rupa and Sanatan Goswami to Mathura. He sent Nityananda Prabhu to Bengal, and he himself went to tour around South India. And he went to so many places, met different places, and different conversations are all recorded in the Madhya Lila, in chapter 9 particularly. But here, this part, he ends up in Udupi. So this conversation is very interesting to study because it kind of shows that why we are down from Madhvacharya Sampradaya, but at the same time how our philosophy is slightly different. So when we study this conversation, we will see how it is different. So when he appeared and he saw the Gopal Krishna deity, he was dancing in ecstasy and he was very happy. And the Tattvavadi sannyasis who were watching him, they were a bit like, maybe he's a Mayavadi sannyasi, so let's not get too close. And then while they were observing him and watching him more and more, and they realized, oh, he's a Vaishnava. He's a Vaishnava. And so they started being more nicer to him, and they started to have a conversation with him. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is totally aware that these Tattvavadi sannyasis are quite proud because they have studied the Vedic literatures quite deeply. So he wanted to, as he does, he wanted to teach them a lesson. So he has a conversation with them and he asks them, you tell me, what is the goal of my life and what is the process for achieving it? Sorry, excuse me. So they replied, the head of the Tattvavadi sannyasis who were there, I think he was the main acharya. He replied, when one follows their varnashram duties, you know, the varna, your 4 varnas and your 4 ashrama duties, and when you follow that and you offer the results to Krishna, then you're eligible for the 5 kinds of liberation. This was the answer. And it seems very sensible. If I follow my duties as a husband and a wife and a mother and a father and whatever, and according to my ashram, and dedicate my results to Krishna, surely I'm eligible for the 5 kinds of liberation. Sounds totally, yeah, you know, I because, I don't know, it is something that we all, I was told in my childhood, just do your duty. And even if you see a lot of Indians in India as well, like, never mind who's God, just do your duty. You know, it's all about do your duty correctly, you know, that should be enough. So he says, this is the highest goal of life and the Vedic verdict of all revealed scriptures. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't waste time. He said, no, that's not it. According to the Vedic verdict of Sastras, it's the process of hearing and chanting, which is the best means to attain. The goal is loving service to Krishna. So he goes into depth to explain how it is the process. The process is not Varnashram system. The process is chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. So this is the verse from Prahlad Maharaj in Canto 7, text 25, very famous. And he's saying that if you perform, this is the actual process. This is what you're supposed to do. And the goal is to achieve love for Krishna, not the 5 kinds of liberation, because he says the pure devotees are not interested in this 5. What are the 5 liberation? Sayuja, merging, which is considered almost hellish. They don't want to merge. Then there is Sarupya, having the same form. Samipya, staying in the same place. Sasti, same opulence. Am I right, Samipya? No, tell me.
Salokya.
Shalokya.
Yeah.
So what is Samipya? Oh, having company. Yes, thank you. So having the same company is Samipya. Salokya is having the same residence as Narayan. Sastri, opulence. So these things pure devotees are not interested in because they want to have a loving relationship with Krishna. In Vaikuntha, Narayan is, you have the relationship, it goes up to, there's Santa and there's Dasya. There's servitorship and there is a relationship in neutrality. And there's awe and reverence. But you will not get the sweetness of Vatsalya and Sakya and Madhurya as you do with Krishna. So this is what pure devotees want. So this is their goal. So in order to do that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, is the chanting and hearing and the 9 processes. There are 64 in the nectar of devotion, but 9 of this is the principle. And he says, and it's really interesting when he says like pure devotees are not interested in this kinds of liberation. Hare Krishna Prabhu. When pure devotees are not interested in this kind of comforts, I mean like even going to heavenly planets, they're not interested. He gives the example of Jada Bharata. You know, Jada Bharata who's able to give up, it's very hard to give up family and children and
community and everything, but Jada Bharata was able to give it up, and because he can see that he wanted something more. These kinds of liberation wasn't attractive to him. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also gives the example, pure devotees don't even mind going to hell, because for them it is having to come to the place of serving Krishna is all they want. They don't mind where they have to be to have the relationship. And the example he gives is of Virtasura. Remember, we were reading it recently. So Virtasura was the demon that was made to kill King Indra. But in his previous life, he was King Chitraketu. Now, Chitraketu was a powerful king, very powerful king, and is a Raja Rishi. And he saw Parvati on the lap of Shiva, and he thought, for a moment he thought like, this is like a mundane relationship, and he giggled or something. And Parvati noticed this, and she took real offense. And she cursed him, you will be a demon in your next life. But Chitraketu, he's very powerful. If it was anybody else, he could have countered it. But he took it humbly. And at this point, when he accepted the curse, Shiva tells Parvati, this is a symptom of a pure devotee. He doesn't mind whether even if he has to go to hell, because he doesn't mind going anywhere so long as he can still serve Krishna and remember Krishna's feet. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains this story. So pure devotee doesn't mind any of these circumstances so long as they try to achieve pure love. So this Tattvavadi sannyasis were very it says the word ashamed, that they were not very, proud of how, but then they said, well, this is what we practice. But over time, that has changed. That has changed. And the reason that has changed is because they can see that there's more taste in worshipping Krishna when you can have these other forms of relationship. When your relationship is not very rigid, it's not just out of respect, awe, and reverence. You can have this other feeling towards Krishna. And I was listening to a lecture. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also speaks about the occupational duties that the Tattvavadis were saying as the process, that it's actually defective, because ultimately it is only trying to get you, from Dharma, there's Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So it's only as a method, it's actually quite materialistic, it's not pure. So he tries to tell them that the process is wrong and your goal is also wrong, and he corrects them. So the lecture I was listening to recently, it was given by the current Acharya of the Madhvacharya Sampradaya in Udupi. And he's an amazing personality himself. It was a class that was given on the disappearance day of Prabhupada. And he gave this, it wasn't a very long class, it's 40 minutes spoken in Kannada, but somebody was translating it into English. But he spent about 15-20 minutes glorifying Srila Prabhupada, how that their way of thinking is so similar. Madhvacharya wanted to defeat impersonalism. He brought forth personalism to all of India, whereas Prabhupada did it for the rest of the world. How great is this personality? So he was really talking very highly of Srila Prabhupada. This current Acharya, he was 78 years old when he was speaking this class. I think it was last year. And he took sannyas from the age of 8. And in South India, it's a very, it's like every 16 years of taking sannyas is like a milestone. Like every 16 years, it's a big celebration. You've been a sannyas 16 years, and another 16 years. He's the only living sannyas who've done it for his 5th cycle. So he's quite a powerful figure for the Madhvacharya. And it was very nice because he was saying how so many has been born brought up around Madhvacharya's philosophy, but later on, a lot of them took initiation from ISKCON gurus because they accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. So it's very, very, very interesting. So I thought I will end it there. But yes, is there any questions or any questions? Comments? It is amazing because yes, in that conversation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talks to the Tattvavadis, he said, your philosophy is so full of karma kanda and jnana kanda, but the only good thing about your lineage is that you recognize Krishna as a person, you recognize the form. He tells them that, and it is, and which is why he was very happy to take picture.
The followers of Madhvacharya called his followers Tattvavadis.
Yes. Madhvacharya
so then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was criticizing the Tattvavadis for being materialistic.
Well, because Madhvacharya himself was a personalist and he worshipped Krishna. But his followers are very much into the ritualistic side. Prabhupada writes it in Bhagavatam, I can't remember which verse, but he says that both Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya's
disciples are very much into the ritualistic side, and till today, actually, he says that till today, a lot of them worship Lord Ramachandra. A lot of them do.
Even Madhvacharya.
Yes, even the Tattvavadis. Yes, they do. Yeah, it is. I think we know about how Krishna is superior to all his. He's the source of all the other incarnations, and his position is just. He's described that he's got 64 main. He's got thousands of, unlimited qualities, but 64 main qualities, and it says that we have 50 of them in minute qualities. As jivas, we have 50 of them, minute quantity. Sorry, yes, we have them in minute quantities. 55 of them, Lord Shiva and the demigods have them in partial quantity. And up to 60 qualities, Lord Narayan has them in full. But there's 4 additional qualities that is only Krishna has it. What are they? Anybody can tell me? The 4 qualities, one of them is that he's got Leela Madhurya. That was what we were discussing earlier, that he exhibits lots of pastimes, especially in his childhood. Lord Narayan doesn't do that. Nobody else does that. His pastimes are so sweet. It's very attractive. That is the Leela Madhurya. And then he is very attractive. He's more, his beauty is so attractive that you're drawn to him just by his appearance. That is not present in any of other avatars. The other one is Prema Madhurya. He's surrounded by devotees who have real love for him. It's not awe, it's not reverence, but real love. That is Prema Madhurya. And finally, the fourth one, he's the expert flute player. No one else can play flute the way he does. So these 4 qualities is specific just for Krishna. So I think when we realize, Krishna says, if you really know my nature, if you really know my nature, you will surrender unto me. You will give everything up for me because there's nothing else. Krishna says there's nothing superior to me. And if you really know my nature, you will surrender. Thing is, we don't know enough and we have to want to know. And Krishna will, yes.